Okay, so today I wanted to introduce my new project. So behind me is a 2012 Ram 2500 Power Wagon. I'm going to basically convert it into a camping slash overlanding rig. And I wanted to give some background on a little bit of history on my plans, but also on how I acquired the truck, because I think it could be interesting and useful for others. So first of all, we do have a 2008 Jeep Wrangler that I bought brand new, and we've been using that since '08 for camping, exploring, long road trips, and etc. And it's been great. I mean, off-road wise, it's excellent. It's comfortable. I don't really have any complaints. So I was looking at potentially getting a rooftop tent for the Jeep, and that was my first thought. But really, the wife didn't really like it. She's looking for a little bit more luxury, and my daughter also. They really want a flushing toilet, right? So we're looking at doing something a little different. So I initially looked at buying a trailer versus a camper. We decided on a camper. The primary reason is I just don't enjoy towing a trailer, especially when you're talking about off-road situations. And we'll probably do some pretty remote camping, overlanding kind of trips. It's very difficult to turn around. If you make a wrong turn or you need to back up, it's just a big hassle. So I'm really much in favor of the camper, although there are some drawbacks to the camper as well. So at any rate, I started researching trucks. Suffice to say, I was looking primarily at the Ram 2500, mostly for the solid front axle. Now Ford 250s, 350s also have solid front axles, but I preferred the Ram for various reasons. The requirements I had for this truck were to, first of all, it had to be reliable. I'm going to be out in some fairly remote places. We usually take trips by ourselves, so there's no one to pull you out if you get stuck or something breaks, right? So the first requirement is reliability. The second requirement is off-road capability. So again, you don't want to be in an off-road situation in a remote location where there's no cell phone service and getting stuck. So you had to be off-road capable, had to be reliable. Third consideration was budget. So I really didn't want to buy a brand new truck. I started this journey by picking my camper. So I spent quite a bit of time researching the campers that I wanted. Once I got that picked out, then I started looking at trucks that would fit the bill for that particular camper. So we're in the midst of COVID currently, and I think a lot of other people have the same or similar ideas as I have. And the 3/4 ton, 1 ton truck market has really skyrocketed recently. So so cost was a definite factor. I ended up buying this through a government auction, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. If other people may be looking at this and trying to understand if it makes sense to go this route. And ultimately, as I said, the retail prices were quite high, and I also noticed that a lot of the 3/4 ton trucks that were for sale in retail, if you do a search on the VIN number, a lot of times you'll find it had been sold at auction, a lot of times government auction. So the retail guys are buying it from the government auction and then reselling it at a profit. So I thought, hey, why can't I do that? There's nothing to prevent me from buying it at the auction and getting a discount on the vehicle. So I started looking at that route. So I actually started looking for diesels, and I could talk about the decision-making process between diesels and gas. But suffice to say, the diesels come with a premium, and that premium is about $5,000 above the gas equivalent. And they add a lot of weight, so they add about 1,000 pounds, roughly anywhere between 800 and 1,200 pounds to the weight of the vehicle. And for the places that we're going, we do a lot of sand, driving in sand, and we'll do some sand camping, that sort of thing. Diesels aren't really suited well for the sand. They have a very limited power range, and of course they're really heavy, and for sand you want to be able to get the tires up and over the sand. You basically want to float on top of the sand, and the limited power band and the weight works against you. Which is not to say you can't drive in the sand with a diesel. Of course you can, but At any rate, those are some things I looked at. So I actually started looking at diesels first, and wasn't able to find one that I thought was a reasonable deal. And so I started also looking at the base model Ram 2500, and ended up with a Power Wagon. And what brought me to that decision was cost. The base model 2500s had a higher payload rating, but it would cost me a lot of money to get it sort of off-road worthy. I would have put a rear locker, likely larger tires, and a winch. If you put on a winch, you'd have to have a bumper. So all that adds cost. It also adds time and complexity. I wanted this to be as economical and as time effective as possible. So the Power Wagon was a really good option. So as I mentioned, so I bought this off of GSA auctions. So GSA is a federal government agency which buys trucks from the factory, from the manufacturer, and then leases them out to various fire departments and forestry departments and things like that. So when their lease is up, they end up selling the vehicle at auction, and it's all internal. The GSA sells their own vehicles. The nice thing about that is there's no fee. So a lot of the sites will have an additional listing fee or auction fee on top of the sales price. So GovDeals, for example, is 10 or 12% above the final bid value. GSA doesn't do that, but there were some downsides. First of all, you have to supply a social security number just to be able to log into the website. Getting logged in and having the ability to bid was a little bit difficult. But that also probably prevents a lot of people from joining the site. It's not as easy as eBay, for example, and you're going to have less people bidding, frankly. The other drawback was, they really don't put a lot of pictures on the website. There's only a few. The ones that are there, they're pretty low quality. I mean, I would compare the pictures to what you might see on an old cell phone, before we had smartphones, right? Not really good quality. On this particular vehicle, the pictures were from pretty far away, so you really didn't get a lot of detail. So there's definitely some risk taking. Now, in that situation, I would probably recommend either going to the site and looking at the vehicle firsthand, or if that's not feasible, there are companies that you can hire that will send out an inspector to actually look at the vehicle, usually a mechanic, and they will take a lot of pictures, really good quality pictures, and give you their take on the vehicle. And it's really you get a really nice detailed report. Unfortunately for this vehicle, it was in a fairly remote location down in southern Oregon. It was had been used by Bureau of Land Management fire department there in southern Oregon. It was too remote for the inspector, so it's too remote for me. So basically, I had to make the decision. If I want to buy this vehicle, it was going to be at some risk, right? So I was taking on some risk. Even if I paid a little bit less for it, you never know, what you're getting, because all you have is a few pictures. Now, I will say that I know that the GSA has a maintenance schedule for whoever is leasing the vehicle to follow, but you never know for sure how well the maintenance schedule is being followed. So, but at any rate, I did win the bid eventually on this truck, and I think I got a pretty good value for the truck. I had it shipped here. That cost me another $1,000 thereabouts to get it shipped. Okay, so let's start with the issues. So things that I noticed right away that need to be taken care of. So I'll start by saying I've only had the vehicle for about 2 weeks. I haven't really driven it much. I've driven a total of about 12 miles. So certainly there could be other things that I'm not aware of yet. So the first thing I noticed, there was a clanging noise when I was driving it up the driveway here upon delivery. And so I was up under the truck trying to figure out what that noise was. It sounded like maybe it was the spare tire, but it was nice and tight. And then I noticed this. So you can see this is the shock. This is the rear shock. And I took it off. You can see where the cover here has been making contact with the body. And you'll notice, if you push down on it. This is supposed to be a heavy-duty truck, right? And I can quite easily compress that. And then you notice there's almost zero rebound. So this shock is totally shot. The other shock in the back wasn't much better, but this was causing the clanging noise. I don't know if you want to call this an issue, but it's certainly something that needs to be addressed. So this is the center console that came with the truck. And this is a very common console. This one, and I've seen this one and some others that are very, very similar. This was a fire command vehicle, and it had additional communication radios, as well as some other things like a siren and some extra lighting and so forth. So these are the wires that came out from underneath this center console. There's a series of relays which control various things, and a whole ton of wiring that goes all the way from the front of the truck, from the interior all the way to the rear. The front brush guard. Now what's interesting is initially I thought I would probably take this off, but this truck sits so tall that this step here is actually pretty nice to have. It allows you to get up into the engine compartment fairly easily, and certainly this will add some protection, but it also adds a lot of weight, so I don't know if I'm going to get rid of it or not. And then you have the winch. This is typical for all the Power Wagons. They have the integrated winch, integrated into the bumper. One thing you'll notice is there are no Power Wagon badging on this truck, and if you if you decode the VIN number, you will see that that was actually a delete option. So this is the way that the GSA apparently ordered their trucks. They actually had the Power Wagon badging deleted. Okay, so other things I've noticed, if you look closely, and this is very typical if you're looking at buying a government auction truck, you can see sort of the remnants of a decal there that used to say BLM fire. It would run all the way, maybe you can see it here, but it would run all the way from this door here to the rear door. And honestly, it's not too noticeable. You can't see it at 10 foot. And it honestly doesn't bother me at all. I mean, this was a fire truck, and kind of gives this thing a little bit of character to know that that's what it was used for before I got it. Now it has reasonably good tires. These are Cooper Discoverer STs, and I don't have much experience with these. I typically buy BF Goodrich tires, but they seem to be well rated. The tires and the tire tread's good. It has these. I think these are probably the original Bilstein shocks, 4600 series. Those will be coming off. I have new shocks on order, but at any rate, that's what's on there now. And here's the interesting rack, and again, I've seen this particular rack on a lot of the government trucks, and it's actually a really nice rack. It's one piece, so you have these sidebars and the headache rack, they call it, welded together. Many of them have the bed coating, and this one's no exception, so it's been bed lined. I've replaced the rear shocks there. These are Fox Performance 2.0 shocks that I put in the rear. I'm awaiting shipment of the front ones and the steering stabilizer as well. But one thing you'll notice on this body, almost no scratches at all, which I was really pleased about. Most of these trucks, or a lot of these trucks, will have pretty deep scratches on the side as they go through brush and that sort of thing. But, looking in the back here, everything's in really good shape. This is one thing you want to look for. The seats on a lot of these vehicles I've seen are really bad. It looks like people drop sodas in them and they're really stained. This one's really good. This one has the rubber mats. I actually like that. I actually prefer that over carpet, especially when buying a used truck, because they're easy to clean and you don't have stains. Also have these little compartments. This was a huge benefit. So this is the winch controller. A lot of the trucks that I was looking at, both in the retail as well as the auction market, did not come with the winch controller. So that coming to the front. Front seats are great. Really no staining, no rips. One of the things to watch out for, something very common, is having a rip right here. So many of the used trucks of this, close to this year model Ram, they'll have a rip right here. And the plastic's all in pretty good shape. The gauges are very clear and so forth. And here's the radio. Here's a little sticker that you'll see on many of the the vehicles that were in fire duty. This gives you an idea of the size and the weight of the vehicle. And here is where the center console was. I have left a couple of these. There's 2 cables here for antennas that are on the top of the truck. Another problem that I have discovered, and I'm hoping it's just a temporary one. So you can see that service tire pressure system. Yeah, so when I got the vehicle, that left rear tire was showing low pressure. It was showing 49 psi. So I filled it up to 60. I filled them all up to 60, which is the recommended tire pressure, and drove it around a bit. And now you can see it doesn't even register at all. That back left just showing a dotted line. So I think it's not getting a signal. I thought maybe the receiver maybe gunked up with mud or something, and I washed the underbody really good, but it hasn't gone away. So that's something I'll need to figure out what's going on. I don't know if it's just the sensor or maybe the little tire pressure monitor system. There's a little controller box in the front that could be bad. I did replace the windshield wipers on this vehicle. The ones that came with it were just garbage. They've been wore out for a long time. So moving along to the engine compartment, one thing I did notice, there were tons of dirt, or really dust, covering the whole engine compartment. Now I've cleaned it out, not really well. I could use another cleaning, but you can see this dirt here on the intake, and the whole engine looked like that. So I cleaned it pretty well, but you can still see a lot of remnants of dirt. But at any rate, everything's pretty reasonably in good shape up here. I have the batteries a couple of years old, and I ended up topping off a couple of the fluids. Now the air filter was really filthy. It looked like it had not been changed in a long time. So here are some of the features that I think really are beneficial on the Power Wagon. This is a manual shifting transfer case. There's no motor to brake, and I think this is a really good benefit. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't want your motor or motor controller to go out and needing to be in four-wheel drive. So I really prefer the manual shifter over the electrical one. And over here we have the locking differentials. So you can put this selector here to lock just the rear differential, and here to lock both the front and rear. And then here you can disconnect the front sway bar. And this is a feature of all the Power Wagons, but you only get these from the factory on a Power Wagon package. You're not going to get these on the Ram 2500 base models. Okay, so what are my final thoughts on this purchase? So I've had it for a couple of weeks. I've driven it a little bit, not a whole lot. I will say that I probably paid between $4,000 and $5,000 discount relative to a similar truck on the open market. So I did pretty well there, I think. Although I was a little bit lucky, I think, too, because I saw another truck identical go for maybe $1,000 more than this one just a couple weeks prior. So, if you're patient, you have a very specific budget in mind, I would suggest just waiting it out, wait for the right deal. Don't get caught up in the emotional aspect of bidding. So, what are the faults? What are the things that I'll have to replace immediately, mechanical wise? So, I'm going to go ahead and replace all the shocks, as well as the steering stabilizer. Again, I had that busted shock that I showed as a Monroe shock, and this truck initially came with Bilstein shocks. So I know it's had at least 2 pair of shocks in the back, if not more. So I believe, there was no telltale signs of any heavy off-roading. All the skid plates look really good. There are no big scratches or gouges anywhere. The paint's in good shape. So I don't think it was really done. Not really driven off-road much. But I found a lot of rocks in the skid plates. In fact, one was about half the size of my fist. They've been wedged between the gas tank and the skid plate, and a bunch of little rocks. So I think this truck was probably driven at reasonably high speeds on dirt and gravel roads with rocky terrain, which would definitely wear out the shocks quicker. So I'm going to replace all the shocks. Makes sense to do them all at the same time. Of course, I'll replace that center console. That's not something that I necessarily have to do, but I didn't really like the console that was in there, so I'm going to put the original console in. I found one on eBay that seems to be in good shape. I'll have to change the fluids. I don't know exactly when everything was changed. I did find a Jiffy Lube sticker in there that showed that the oil had been changed recently, and the oil is totally clean. But again, you know, the air filter was completely filthy. So you know, maintenance-wise, it's a little bit of a guess. So I'll go ahead and probably dump all the fluids, and I would usually do that anyway, buying a used vehicle. So I think that's kind of typical, not specific with this truck at all. I'll remove the rack. Of course, that's another optional thing. You know, if I weren't putting a camper, I think I would keep that. That rack's actually quite a nice rack. Anything else? The tire pressure monitoring system. So those are basically the problem areas or things that need to be addressed right away. And mechanically is really just the rear shocks and the TPMS. So if you were going to, you know, buy one and if you were on a real budget, you know, those are the minimal things that I would have to replace to really get this thing roadworthy. Now, one more consideration is the titling of this vehicle. So I can't register the truck or get it titled until I get a special form from the government. It's called an SF-97 form, and that's equivalent essentially to a title. And once I get that form, then I can go to my Department of Motor Vehicles and get the truck registered and titled in my name. Until I get that form, I just have a temporary tag on the back. So that's another consideration. You know, the GSA said that it should arrive in 2 to 3 weeks. It's been 2 weeks now. I haven't seen it. So you know, buying this thing has been a little bit of a hassle. It's not nearly as easy as going into a used car lot or a new car lot for that matter, and signing some paperwork and it's pretty much done. You know, there's a little bit of legwork involved. But you know, if you're willing to do that, and you can either inspect the vehicle or pay someone to inspect it, I think you can potentially get a good deal. And I do see a lot of Power Wagons on sale in the GSA on the GSA website. They're not all used, or not all extremely used. You know, some of them are just a couple of years old. And I do see a lot of the base model 2500s and everything else too. You know, I chose a Ram, but you know, you can find F-250s and 350s and GMC and Chevy trucks all day long. Even cars you can get through GSA auctions. So anyway, I wanted to share my experience. You know, I was wondering what to expect if I were to go through GSA auction, and I really didn't see much online in the way of expectations and personal experiences. So I thought I'd put this video out and give you at least my experience, and that may help you to decide on whether or not that's the right route for you. I'll have additional videos on doing the overland build. It'll be a pretty mild build, I'll say that. It's all going to be basically put in the camper. I will need to upgrade the suspension, and I'll kind of go through that thought process as well, but that'll come in later videos. So anyway, that's my first impressions of the truck, and that is you know, what you may expect if you go through the government auction website. So, all right, so thank you for listening.